because there's legal reasons to it, but this is where we're going. And so I go into that courtroom, and there's peers. These are the courtrooms where I testified as a detective. And it was a new judge. I was not familiar with her, but I hear state of California, on behalf of the government, the FBI, case against Alfredo Luna Jr. This case is dismissed, and it was victory. It was David and Goliath, and David won again. Now, I wish I could say it was all sunshine and rainbows. And a part, just so the audience knows, is back in 2023. I don't know if I said this part, but when we're going to go into the civil case for the gun violence protective order, because there was two cases, the civil and the criminal, to get the FBI to testify in the stand. Then they had dismissed that case. So I had one. They had dismissed the civil case a few years earlier, and then this was the remains of the criminal case. So now it's completely won. But I remember I told the attorney, make sure you tell the judge to give me a court order to get my firearms back, because I know the way this process works. And the judge acknowledged it. They gave me a court order demanding immediate release of all my property, to include my firearms, ammunition, all that. So now, Joint Terrorism Task Force, FBI's JTTF, is the one that created all this drama for me. And interesting enough, Mike, the detective from Rialto Police Department here in Southern California, because it was Special Agent Enrique Armenta, he was the FBI agent, and it was Detective John Candias from Rialto PD, are the two case agents on mine. So the federal and the state. Well, our Candias retires early. And that's always been very interesting to me, because I've always made it very clear, not only am I going to win, but when I do win, I'm going to sue the government. And because both you guys lied, that means you violated policy, which means I can sue you guys individually too. Like, I've never kept it a secret that these are my intentions.
Nice.
So now I've won everything. I have the court order to get my firearms back. I go to the Rialto Police Department to get my firearms back. I go, they say, hey, you got to go to the evidence building. I go to the evidence building. I sit there and poof, here's my court order. Here's my ID. Give me back my shit. That's all. That's where I'm at. I'm on cloud 9. And so now the lady's going back and forth. She's talking to the supervisor, and she comes back. She goes, we can't. I'm like, what do you mean you can't? I got a court order from a judge that says you have to. She's all, well, our policy and state policy is you got to fill out this form with the state of California to see if California wants to give you back your firearms, and that you're eligible. I said, policy and mandate don't supersede law. This court order is law. And I'm telling you, you guys have to give me back my stuff. If not, your Penal Code 166 violation of court order. And I dropped the penal code on them so they would know I know what I'm talking about, because I'm sure they didn't know who I was just yet.
Yeah.
So eventually, and this poor lady, and like I said, I was respectful, but there was no secret. I'm pretty pissed.
Yeah.
Because Rialto's far. It's not like it's a neighboring city. Like, it was a long drive to go out there. And so essentially what she tells me is, she goes, listen, we can't give them back to you. You got to complete this form. And I say, okay, so when people complete this form, because she says this is what happens to everybody. When people complete this form, it takes California anywhere from 6 to 18 months. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So while I'm talking to her, I go to the website she's telling me to complete this. And it asks for the serial numbers, all the identifying stuff for each firearm. I said, okay, well, we have an issue here. Can you print out the property page for me? Because the carbon copy you guys gave me, the property receipt, one, is barely legible. Two, when you match it against the information that you guys put in the police report, the numbers don't match up. And you and I both know that if I fill out this form with California and there's a serial number that's off or anything, they're going to reject it. I got to start over, and we're back to square one. She's like, yeah, no problem. We can give you the evidence page, but you got to go back to the main police department to records to get that. So I say, okay. So then I drive all the way there, Mike. And I say, hey, this is what happened. I need you guys to give me the police report. And she says, well, you have to fill out this form requesting the police report, and then records will call you in a few days and send it to you. So I fill out this form. You have to put, who you are, why you want it, et cetera, et cetera. I get a call a couple of days later from a record supervisor. Mr. Luna, I say, yeah, this is me. You requested a copy of the police report in this case. It's been denied. I said, why? I need this. And she goes, well, because of the type of investigation is. I go, it's closed. I won. Your detective retired. I go, and the FBI dismissed this case. I go, and I'm trying to get my guns back, and I can't because I need the information from the police report. She goes, yeah, but the way the FBI do, and essentially what she's hinting at is because they seal these records, the FBI does. And so I told her, well, forget the police report. I'll go through the subpoena process for that, but can you at least give me the property page? She goes, we can't release you anything. It has to come through a subpoena. So I'm like, now here's the catch, and I saved this for the end. While this is going on, the same prosecuting California's district attorney's office that's been prosecuting me is now calling me back into court, not as a suspect, everyone, but to testify as an expert witness in gang cases again. So I'm showing up to court. The gang members from these prior cases see that, oh, Detective Luna's, back, not as a detective, but in the role as an expert witness from the time in my capacity as a detective. And so what do they realize? Oh, he's back. So what does that mean? I'm now a target to the gang again. I'm a target to a gang where Detective Candias and FBI, Special Agent Armenta, when they did their initial police reports, they normally, everybody's here's seen a press release. They go arrest somebody, they'll be like, the 1, 2, 3 block of so-and-so. They never give specific addresses, and it's for a reason. It's a safety issue. Well, the FBI doxed me to the media. They put my specific address. They put my driver's license number in the newspaper, and in there they wrote, and the FBI took all his firearms. So you just told every gang member that has open cases with me where I live and that I don't have any means to protect myself or my family. And for 4 years, I had to live that nightmare. My son wasn't allowed to throw the trash. Nobody was allowed to check the mail because if something was going to happen, I wanted it to happen to me, not to my family because of me.
Jesus. Wow.
And so during this process, they don't want to return the firearm. So of course I had to go, and now I'm bringing this to present day. So a few weeks ago, back in April or late March, I go to buy. So I'm like, I got to be able to protect myself. So I go buy a new rifle and a new pistol. And California, you have a 10-day rule and all that, and then you get your guns. So I'll use the company because shout out because they did it right. So Turner's, shout out to Turner's. I know sometimes they don't get a lot of love, but I'm going to give Turner's love. So I got to the local Turner's to buy a rifle and a pistol, and I get a call a couple days later, and they know the whole story because I've shared everything with them, And they said, "Hey, man, your background check came back as delayed." He goes, "So it's going to take a little longer than 10 days." He goes, so run the process through me. He says, "All right." He goes, "They got 30 days now to do your background." He goes, "And there's one of 3 things that can happen. Your background can come back approved, it can come back denied, or it can come back inconclusive." I'm like, okay, well, it's not going to come back denied because, like I said, my record's clean. I have no restraining orders. There's nothing prohibiting me from owning a firearm. I go, what's inconclusive? He goes, well, it's the same as no. He goes, let me explain. He goes, inconclusive means that the state's not clearing you, but they're also not saying you can't own a gun. So they leave the onus on the dealer, but no dealer wants liability. So every dealer, now that the ball's in their court, will deny the transaction. So you end up having to, you have to find some mom and pop shop that will willing to sign you. So it ended up taking about 3 weeks. He calls me and he's like, "Hey, your background got approved. You can come in, finish paying off the balance, and you get to take these bad boys home with you." Wow. So I go and I do. So now when I'm going through Rialto, when I was trying to get my firearms back, they said that the reason the state does this process is because they have to confirm that you can have firearms. So now I call Rialto back. I'm saying, "Hey, I need my guns back. I have that court order." And, "Wait, sir, you got to do that form." I said, "Yeah, but you told me that form is because the state has to make sure that I can own firearms. I have a background clearance because I just bought a rifle and a pistol. So now you don't have that concern because I can bring this form to you that shows you my background's approved. You can run these serial numbers to see, where they came from and that I own them. And now we're good." Nope, doesn't work that way. So they still have my original firearms hostage. I have the new firearms and ammunition, and trust me, man, trying to build a supply and ammo again in California with the cost of it's been very expensive. And that kind of brings us into present day where I'm at now, man.
Yeah, that's good. So you probably got, I would say, a release because the political situation changed. Because the political situation was keeping pressure on you. That's why they did this to begin with. The judge was even admitted it's a political situation. I can't if I want to, and it's lawful, I can't release you. So then the political system changed. That pressure came off, and you got released. So that's and that happened for a lot of the J6ers too.
They did.
So, and I work with several of them.
One of the things that I left out, just so people know, is during this process, this was back in, I want to say June or July of 2021. I get 3 letters from Bank of America that says you have 21 days to remove your balance. We're closing down your account. You can't appeal it. Wouldn't tell me why. And ultimately, we learned that they started doing this to all the J6ers. So I get debanked from Bank of America. I was still doing contract work for explosive work with K9. So, we fly all over the country. And so I immediately noticed that when I started to fly, I'm getting pulled for all these checks, which ultimately we learned that the Quad S program. So for the last 4 years, every time, because now I speak at conferences and stuff like that, every time I fly anywhere, always pulled aside for the quote unquote random, right? This random inspection, because we learned that I'm a Quad S'er. But the good news is last month, we're in June, so April, I went to fly out to Plymouth, Plymouth, Massachusetts. And, I showed up early because I'm like, here we go, Quad S, and it was gone. I was a normal person again. So now I was just like, well, now because listen, if you're Quad S, you got to show up like 3.5 hours early for the process so you don't miss your flight. So now I'm sitting there and I'm just like, what do I do with all this time? Because I got to experience it, but I was so traumatized from all this, Mike, that on the flight home, I was like, well, maybe they just missed something on the flight over here, and I still better show up 3 hours early, because if it was a mistake and I think I'm normal again, and I go, I'm gonna miss my flight, I'm screwed. If I live on the West Coast, I'll be on the East Coast. I still showed up early, but no, it was normal. So it's official. I'm off the list that they say never existed. I'm now off of it.
Wow. But there's still obviously some problems in California, as we're seeing now with the LA riots. So where do you see that going? I know you're a good distance away from it, where you live, but and you've noticed a few things, but nothing major. What do you think is going to happen?
So, and this opens up that conversation we talked about at the beginning of the show too. A lot of people say nothing's happening. Absolutely, there's a lot happening. Here's one of the first things that I want to bring to everybody's attention. This is the first administration, because even Trump's first administration, they didn't pull this off. Who can tell me a leak they've heard in this current administration? There's been 0 leaks.
Good point.
Even in Trump's first administration, it was notorious. There was leaks everywhere. And people even said, like, what the heck's going on? We've had 0 leaks in Trump's presidency so far. We're approaching 6 months. There hasn't been 1 leak. What does that tell me? Operational security. Now, to supplement this thought process, 2 weeks ago, you have Kash Patel and Dan Bongino come out and say it's no longer safe for us to be in the Washington headquarters. We're moving shop. Let me translate that for everybody. The place is covered in surveillance. We know they're monitoring what we're doing, and we can't be there no more. So we're moving to another facility. What this tells me is the phase that they're moving into now is a phase that they don't want the deep state eavesdropping on. What else supports this opinion that I have is, what else did they say the following day? Our reinforcement teams, or I think he said reinforcement or reform teams, I forget which word he used, should be ready to be in every field office within the next 2 weeks, which I would believe that's this week now. What that tells me is they just sent teams to every field office in the country that are going to do 2 things. They're going to make sure those offices are working the way they're supposed to, and they're going to make sure that there's nothing corrupt going in there. So you have them closing down the office that everything's being surveilled in, and now they're sending watchdogs to every field office to make sure they're not compromised. That tells me they're moving into a phase that is probably putting us a lot closer to what we all want to see, which is these arrests. And so
that's great. Man, this is so good to have your insight on this. Wow. Fantastic, man. Good job.
Well, and so here's the other part. Here's the other part that's really important that people have to understand is, and I think the one thing we all understand is, these are RICO style. These are either RICO investigations or a hybrid of a RICO style investigation. So we all want arrests, but I would ask the audience, what's more important to you, an arrest or a conviction?
Yes.
And hands down, we're all going to say convictions. We still know that the DOJ still has people that are dirty in it. The FBI still has people that's dirty in it. And we've seen through the pushback against Trump that we still have a compromised judicial system. So 2 things to consider in this food for thought here. If the arrests were to happen now, you would be putting these cases in front of a corrupt judges,
Hmm.
You would be putting them still in front of corrupt people that can compromise these cases. They can create situations of prosecutorial misconduct to get these things dismissed. So that's issue number one.
Good point.
Issue number two is, if these, and I believe I'm 100% right on this, Mike. If these are RICO style investigations, that means there's all kinds of wiretaps that are taking place right now. There's all kinds
Yes.
of. We're finally probably using FISA in the appropriate way. And if you, once you make that first arrest, we all have a constitutional right to a fair and a speedy trial, which means even though we're used to seeing cases being drug out, it would be tactical for that first case to be like, nope, we're ready to go to trial now. And people would ask, well, why is that to their advantage? Well, it's not to that person's advantage, but if that person's threatened where they don't have a choice, they're going to be the sacrificial lamb. It's an advantage to everybody else, because that means that the prosecution now has to release all the discovery. So if you still have active wiretaps, if you still have active surveillance, you just compromise every one of those cases. So the first arrest that we want, that can't be made, it can't come to the public until they're ready to close shop on the entire investigation. So this way, if in the event it becomes an issue of discovery, nothing's compromised. So what I anticipate is that when we see that first arrest, you're going to see a snowball acceleration of arrest.
That's what
Now,
I thought.
so when people ask, well, when do you think that's going to happen? Here's two things that I'll say. Me personally, I think we see it right before midterms or just after midterms.
I agree. After
That's what I'm looking at. One of the markers that I'm looking for preceding that is when we start to see judges and prosecutors arrested, removed, or defunded. Because that means when they start to move that element out, that means they're getting ready to put the stuff we want into the judicial process.
Absolutely.
So I would say the marker to look for is when we start seeing judges defunded, because there's a lot that you can't fire them and you can't remove them, but you can definitely defund what's coming into them. So defunded, we see judges are starting to get arrested with some of these other things. And I actually think that that's a test, Mike. I think they want to see, how's mainstream media going to handle the optics of this? How's the deep state going to handle the optics of this? How's the normal everyday citizen going to handle the optics of judges being arrested? And guess what? We all are good with it because we're like, we don't want them defending illegals. So you're seeding a mindset of it's not shock and awe to see judges arrested. And so now in the future, when we see them get arrested for these other things, you're not going to have like a lot of pushback. You're not going to lose the court of public opinion, and you're going to be able to facilitate that process. And that's how I would see that pan out.
Yeah. Like that Wisconsin judge, that's just the opening salvo, I think. I think you're right. So yeah, the corrupt judicial has to be taken out before we can really move. I agree.
Yeah. And so to bring it back to your question with LA is, listen, there's a lot, for those that are unfamiliar with Operation Gladio, I would say absolutely study that. You should actually have Colonel Towner on your show, Mike. She is the absolute authority on talking about that. She's phenomenal in her explanation of this. But what you learn is, we hear about all these intelligence agencies, we hear about these terrorist networks, but we have this understanding. We use the word deep state, and
Right.
it's kind of the umbrella of what all these organizations, and these bad groups fall into. And when you look at the LA riots, and you just saw Bongino and them and Cash announce the guy that was passing out the masks just got arrested.
Yep.
And if you look into that guy, he's part of a group known as the Brown Berets. And when you research the Brown Berets, there's a history of corrupt activism that follows them. There's a lot of organizations, like La Raza and things like that. But this particular unit, they're pushing it's bad stuff. There's a lot of photographs with them with some of the BLM leaders, which is that's usually you wouldn't expect that. You have a very cultural Mexican thing with a very cultural black thing. They're usually going to be at odds ends with each other, but you see these leaderships in these units that are taking photo optics together. So there's a collaboration there. We see what's happening with the lady from Walmart, the Walton lady, financing the No Kings.
Right.
Everybody's kind of seen the map out there. So what you can see when you look at what's going down in LA and with the mask and the Brown Beret guy being the one distributing them is there is a professional orchestrated effort behind that. This is not a grassroots organic, protest turn riot. No, this is something that was planned. It's systematic. We've seen the leaflets and stuff that have instructions in English and Spanish on what to do, how to create chaos, how to avoid law enforcement. They were dumped all over LA. People have been putting them all over social media. Well, you have DOJ and FBI, going after these brown beret guys, doing these arrests. That means they're going after the intel. If you look at the deployment of the Marines, here's one thing that caught my eye, Mike, and I'd like to get your opinion on this.
Yeah.
The Marines are going to go in, and that means their ROEs are going to be to defend the federal buildings.
Yep.
And a very limited scope on how far out that perimeter is. It's going to be very, very limited. So then ask me this, Mike. LAPD has its own helicopters. FBI has its own helicopters. Why are we seeing Marine Blackhawks and Marine Cobras way outside the scope of the perimeters doing recon?
Yeah, because as you and I know, Marines are fantastic as far as closing with and destroying the enemy. And they don't rely on anybody else. They're completely self-contained. And if they're told to go, oh buddy. So I think it's a strong message to deep state actors that we're ready to go, full in on this. So
100%.
And they probably had some insight that something was going to go down.
100%. As soon as I saw those helicopters breaking what would be the normal perimeter, I said they're preparing for these Marines to go outside the scope. They're not just going to be there babysitting a building. they're prepared for these Marines to have QRF teams to go out there, help the HSI guys. They're reconning how this all looks, and they're preparing for that. So that gave me a lot of joy knowing that they're going to lay the smack down as soon as they get the green light. So I was happy about that. The other thing that it allowed me to recognize is Governor Newsom didn't put the request for the National Guard. And so you've seen this argument being made of, well, hold on, how can Trump deploy the National Guard? He's not doing what precedence has set. And this is what I'll explain to the audience. Let's rewind just a couple of weeks, Mike. We have the largest U.S. military presence at the southern border of the United States in the history of our country. My question is why? You have Tom Homan, President Trump, coming out saying that our border is secured 93.7%. They've literally have almost shut down fentanyl coming to this country, and they've literally almost shut down immigration or invasion coming to this country. It's not like the military is only deployed to the part where they still need to build the wall. It's a mass deployment across our southern border. So if there's not an immigration crisis and there's not a narcotics crisis, why do we have the largest U.S. military presence? Because they understand that there's a threat.
Yeah.
And they have this military pre-positioned for a threat. And Trump understands this. And so what I kind of been telling, my audience over the last few weeks as we've kind of been watching this and looking at the different types of units being sent to the southern border is I said, listen, we've always had, Juanito's done a good job of explaining it to us as others, that there's certain cities that we know are going to get attacked. We know LA's, one of those cities that's on the radar. Every major city, Portland, the Seattles, the Dallases, the Austins, New York, we've kind of know these cities to expect. Mm-hmm. Well, if we know, and if you go back to 2023, you have the United States Police Chiefs and Sheriffs Association and this is back in early 2023, when they said that somewhere between 12 and 18 million illegals had came into this country. But the concern was that at that point, 2 million of them were considered tier 1 threats. So if you got, and just to put this people into perspective for people to understand, if you guys all remember looking at the deployment of the U.S. military in Iraq during the war, the largest military presence we ever had in Iraq at one time, U.S. presence, was 360,000 troops. And if you guys remember looking at the map, you could see us everywhere.
Yeah.
Now imagine 2 million tier 1 threats in the United States. That's a deployment. That was a strategic military deployment inside this country with military age males from every adversary that hates us. And the worst part of it is, it wasn't just Mexicans. It wasn't just blacks and Haitians. You had Europeans that were sent over here. You had Asians that were sent over here. You had military age males that look like the demographics that represent all of America. And so if we think about what did they do on January 6th, we know January 6th was something that was orchestrated by the intelligence agencies, color revolutionaries, contractors, the FBI, et cetera, et cetera. And once you get enough of them to participate, you have the emotions of the crowd that was there that gets involved. So you have this thing that started off synthetically that all of a sudden looks organic because everybody's emotions gets involved. So if we understand, And we know that, the Gretchen Whitmire case, that was kind of setting up for J6. Well, J6 was also setting us up for something. Aside from making everybody afraid to go to protest, it was also to gauge and understand how would this look on a mass deployment. So now imagine in LA, we'll use as the test, as the beta one for this. If you have people that are out there that look like the people of LA, well, how many of those do we know were actually American citizens? How do we not know a lot of those weren't some of those 2 million tier 1 threats that were specifically sent to California because they match the demographics of California? And then you start sucking in, because here's something I found very interesting, Mike. Over the last 2-3 days, a lot of the most popular LA gangs were putting out videos saying, you better not bring that to our hood, or if you do, it's like out for you. So there were a lot of LA gangs that were back protecting their hood and not involved in the riots.
Good point.
Yeah. But when you look at the riots, you're like, but I saw a lot of gang members. Did you?
Or what looked like them, yeah.
Or did you see what looked like gang members? Mm-hmm. And so I think what we saw unfolding in LA was chess. Trump the deep state, because this is what gangs would do to us. Every now and then, and everything that just so people understand, my mindset and thought process here comes from what I saw at the local level with the way gangs played the chess match with us as, the gang teams and the detective teams. And I just see this as a much larger scale, and then obviously our military backgrounds. Yeah. So one of the things gangs would do is they would go and do fake robberies with zero intentions to actually rob the store. But they would have surveillance cars because they wanted to see what was our response time. Based on, how many robbers were, the 911 caller gave in, how many units did we dispatch? They were reconning us. Yep. They were doing counter intel. And I think what you see here happening in LA is you're seeing intel, counter intel, and then counter intel, because you have the deep state that wants to say, okay, what's it going to take for Trump to deploy the military? And if he does deploy the military, in what capacity is he going to do it? If we handcuff to where we don't give Trump a working relationship with the military, how's Trump going to handle that? And so I think you see both sides. Trump's not going to show all his cards. Newsom and the deep state aren't going to show all their cards, but both sides are making this assessment because what's coming over the next few days, these mass riots. So you deploy LA first. It's one of the biggest ones, because what are they doing now? Both sides are going back to the drawing board. Okay, he did this and she did that. So let's make these adjustments for all these riots that are coming over the next few days. And I think what we saw in LA was a beta test for what the No Kings movement's going to try to deploy.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I wonder if, we have the resources available to respond to all of them, because there's supposed to be like upwards of 2,000 different protests. Of course, not all of them are going to be violent. And some of them will be distractions. And some of them that we think we're going to be violent, some we think we're going to be violent are not going to be. And maybe they pose as being violent, and then they just like peter out real quick once they get a response. So again, testing. But I really think that we're going to see, people getting killed soon. I don't know what soon is. Is it going to be in a couple of days? Is it going to be in a few weeks, another month or so? But once the killing starts, it's going to ramp up pretty significantly.
I agree. And this is why I tell everybody, trust your discernment. And just because you see something unfolding on TV, because like I said, if you go back and you look at the LA riots over the last few days, all of us are like, yep, that's what happens. They go out there, this is what it looks like. It looked like what we anticipate. But that's why I challenge people to think, is it really what we saw? Or was there an orchestration that took place here? Because here's the other thing to consider. Just like, for those that follow the boards, in the boards, it talks about how you got to be prepared for contingencies. And that's just something you have to do in real life tactically anyways. Well, the deep state didn't think Trump was going to pull off the win in 2024. They were able to steal it from him in 2020. So they have this mindset and this plan of what 2024 was going to look like. And I think that's what the invasion was for. I think we were going to see mass chaos and casualties. When they saw that Trump won, now they got to go to the contingency. So I think we're still going to see it. We're not going to see it on the scale that they initially planned for. But I think what they're going to try to do, I think what their contingency is, and you could look at the rhetoric that Mayor Bass put out and Governor Newsom put out, is they were using words like, Trump's violating the Constitution. That it's the White House that's creating this chaos. All of us know when all this is said and done, there's going to be some oversight committee that's going to come back and look at Trump's administration and to, like they did J6 and everything else. Now, here's the thing, though. Trump's team's prepared for it, too, because all you have to do is go through social media, look what Ezra Cohen has said, look what Dan Scavino has said, look at what Kash Patel has said, look what Stephen Miller said, and they've all been using words like this: enemy combatant, LA's occupied, there's an invasion. They're
Perfect.
all speaking the language to support Trump doing a military operation. And we know that through these prior oversight committees that they've always used social media to go back and say, well, Trump said this and your people said this. So Trump's people are all on the same page on the verbiage that they're using. And words matter in an information war. So I think what the deep state's going to do now is try to use this as an impeachment process against President Trump. And I think this is what we're probably going to see in the future is there's only three ways they get rid of Trump. They let him finish his term, which they don't want to do. They try to do what they've already tried twice and been unsuccessful in, or impeach him. And we see what's going on in the Middle East. They're trying to sabotage what's going on in the Middle East. We've seen that they try to sabotage what he's been doing with the economy, with the tariffs. So I think they're going to bring all this stuff into an apex, Mike, and they're going to try to use that to kind of create this, look at all this is because of Trump. We have world problems. We're having economic problems. We're now having, chaos in the streets. They're hinting at COVID 2.0, everybody. That's we're not completely clear of that.
Mm-mm.
And I think they want to put all this at the foot of Trump to do something that's an impeachment. But I think based on watching Trump over the last few months in his presidency, that he's multiple steps ahead of him, because everything they've tried, it's backfired on him.
Yeah. So, we've had, Sean Taylor on. We're trying to get him on to do a roundtable here so that he could get his insights as far as the money situation. The cartels basically running a lot of this stuff. And that's what Tom Homan and his team were really going after in L.A. Do you see them giving pieces to the Democrat Party, and that's why they're so vehemently trying to oppose Trump going after the illegal aliens?
So I had a chance to interview JJ Carroll 2 days ago.
Nice.
And and he's got a vast amount of networking with the Border Patrol guys and stuff like that.
Sweet.
And he doesn't he doesn't have as much light and hope as I do. He's definitely he's in a darker place than I am. But nonetheless, using his information, he's not happy with, if you're going into LA and at a minimum a third of the population is illegal, why are you going in with such small numbers and not giving these guys, go in there with, get your best of the best in Border Patrol, and instead of doing individual operations, nationwide, tackle these big cities with all these guys. And he doesn't necessarily, he loves Tom Homan, but he says that there's a gap in the leadership between the guys in the the rank and file guys and when you get to Tom Homan, and that this lack of experience is kind of what's facilitating this good intentions, but you're not doing it the correct way. So there's, in full transparency, I trust his opinion. That's what he did for a career. He knows these guys far better than I do. But the next question I asked him, Mike, I said, well, now, given what happened, are they going to back off? Is Tom Homan going to pull the reins on the guys and say, hey, let's let these fires simmer out a little bit before we go? And he said he absolutely can't. Now he can't. They have to even continue to go harder. He goes, so this is going to escalate. I said, okay. So that I'd rather use his
word. See, military go across the border. What are your thoughts?
Man, there's no coming back once we do that one.
Yeah.
But if you look at what the Mexican president said, she initiated it. You start telling people in our country to mobilize, those are strong words. You get I forget what his position is in the cabinet. That came out and showed the sign, or the map, And he's like, yeah, we'll pay for
Oh
this
yeah,
wall.
yep, exactly.
I mean,
If
listen,
this is our land, we want it back. Yeah, it's like,
and
whoa.
I don't know how you took it, Mike, but I was like, that sounds like a threat. Like, it
Yeah,
sounds like you're,
well, come get it. Yeah, come get it.
you have, yeah,
We backed off in the Mexican American War. We basically came to your capital and we're like, okay, we're just going to take this area and you guys can have the rest of it. So,
yeah,
yeah, I don't want to take any of Mexico. I love Mexico, but I think the borderlands are basically they're going to have to be taken.
we have to.
Yeah,
we have to.
Yeah.
We've shown enough, because listen, it's easier to defend our border if it's been moved down a little bit than it is the way it currently exists.
Right.
If you just look at the way the land looks itself,
Yeah.
It'd be easier, and we'll see. But our military is there for a reason, Mike, and it's not to keep people in, because there's a lot of special units that are tapped into that already.
Right.
So, we know the CCP is working with the cartels, and we know Mossad's working with the cartels. We know Mossad's giving the cartels a lot of tech and a lot of weapons. We know the CCP is giving the cartels a lot of the financial influence through the fentanyl and stuff like that. So, the cartels is not the way people used to see back in the movies. A bunch of guys on some rinky-dink trucks, hanging out the windows with AK. The cartels, if you guys haven't been paying attention, they got the same type of equipment that our SWAT teams have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say in a lot of situations,
RPGs and all kind of crazy stuff now. 50 cows, yeah, they got it all. A lot of it came from Afghanistan through Ukraine. Yep.
So I started the show saying that I support law enforcement, and I do. And so if people have respected my opinion up to now, then hope people will respect this. Our law enforcement is not trained or designed to fight the cartels.
No.
And they're not trained or fight or to fight military units within our country. They're not. Even if you have guys with military experience like I was on these teams, because you do have that, they don't represent the vast majority of the agency.
Mm-mm.
And gangs don't move and operate like military units. They don't, most cops aren't going to understand that they're being flanked. They're not going to recognize a military ambush. Everybody thinks in the concept of mafias and street gangs. And I'm telling you, from fighting both of them, they don't operate the same. They're completely different strategies. And so if you're fighting a cartel or a unit, a terrorist unit that's came into, Houthis one, a Hamas one, you name it, Al Qaeda one, what are they going to do? Before they take down any cop, they're going to take down the communications for that agency.
Right.
They know where our repeater towers are. They know what the antenna structures on these agencies look like. They're going to take them down. They know that we rely on air support. You don't think they're going to go and take down the helos? You don't think that they know which fixed wings we have at private airports? They know all this information. They're going to take out the logistics for law enforcement. Then they start taking out the officers. And when you have officers responding to that, they're going to be responding to ambushes. And the reason I know this is about a decade ago in Southern California, the closest we ever saw to a military style attack was when the Mongols took on the sheriff's department and police department in Hemet. And they did it with ambushes. And you want to talk about scaring the shit out of law enforcement? That scared the shit out of law enforcement, because everybody looked back and said, man, that could have taken out any one of us. And the response to that was a failure, because as I was looking at it, I was like, okay, we've put out safety bulletins. We've brought awareness to it. Why are we not training to actively engage this? Why are we looking at this as a one-off situation? And that if there was a moment to prepare for it, that was it, Mike. And we never did. And so, people have to understand that our military is the only way to combat the cartels or any unit that's inside our country. That's the only way. Yeah. Now, our law enforcement can supplement it, but our law enforcement can't lead that. They would get taken out, man. They'd get annihilated.
Mm-hmm. Now, I saw this earlier, and I just looked it up while you were talking, because I wanted to make your case that you were talking about come true, as far as like they're going to go after the police. They already started to go after police. In New York Police Department, they had a bunch of cars. They got firebombed. Incendiary devices. They found incendiary devices that hadn't gone off, but they destroyed a bunch of their cars. So it's already started, like you're talking about, in New York, and it's not getting the press. A lot of these attacks right now aren't getting the press, and that's by design too. It's really going to be up to people like us to keep people informed. And at some point, I think we may even go down as far as like the internet, the grid system. I've already started to see a little bit.
There was a
for
scare
myself.
today.
Yeah.
For those of us that use StreamYard today, I use StreamYard. It completely went down globally.
Oh, it was globally? I thought I thought they were just going after me.
No, it went down. It went down globally, and come to find out, it was as a result of the Google Cloud service. And so, we saw vulnerability. Now here's a good contingency. Shout out to Chris Polovosky over there at Rumble, because he immediately took to social media and said, Rumble and Rumble Studio still working. So yeah. I responded to him, and I was just like, all right, bro, you got it. Just wish you made it more pretty, because StreamYard's so much easier than the Rumble Studio.
Yeah, definitely. All right, brother. Any other things you want to talk about, or let's promote your Alpha Warrior show over on Rumble?
Yeah. What I would tell everybody is, I know we're frustrated because we're not seeing the arrests and the timeline that we want, and I understand that. But I would tell people is, these are some of the mistakes that I've been hearing, and I understand because they're honest mistakes. Well, they've had these cases for years. Why not just go arrest them? The investigations have been done. They haven't. Cover-up investigations have been done. The destruction of evidence has been done. The burying, every investigation we saw was a compromised one. So what you're seeing now is, not only do they got to go back and reinvestigate these cases the correct way, but in the course of that, as you learn about the cover-ups, those are new investigations that you have to investigate. And we're talking child crimes on a lot of these things, the most hideous of crimes that are out there. And I can tell you from a detective, and thank God I had very few, because I dodged them as much as I could, because it's just that's not what I wanted for my career. I wanted the violence and gangs is where I wanted to be. So my hat's off to my partners and detectives that did child crimes. The little bit I did, Mike, was just, it's nightmares, bro. But they take so long. Like people think, like, when you see an active abuse case, like someone just got, a child just got assaulted, they're arrested right away, it goes to court right away. Those typically they're fast because it's something that just happened. But when you have a case where a kid comes back and it's like, hey, my uncle or my neighbor did this to me, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, those cases are so lengthy because there's so much that you have to try to prove because so much time has passed. That was just one case. Imagine 100,000, 200,000, and you're limited in the people that you have. So one, I'm thinking that the first thing they did is probably triage. Which cases even have a fighting chance if we even bring them to court? And then on top of that, which cases still have kids, or where the victims are still minors, because, they may have happened until when they're 6, 7, and 8. Maybe they're 17, 16 now. They're still minor. There's still legal things that you have to do to go through that. That takes time. So I would just tell people, be patient. And with that, everybody always asks me, well, then how long, Alpha? What is your timeline that you're giving these people? It pretty lines up with every timeline that I've said. It's midterms. And this is why. If we get to midterms and we haven't seen anything, then you're probably going to see me start ringing the bell on the panic button, because at a minimum, you need 2 years allotted for the court time. So we need a rest by the time we get to midterm to make sure we see these come to their conclusion by the time Trump's coming out in 2028. Wow. And so for me, the red line in the sand is absolutely midterms. If we're going about this through the state and local jurisdiction. Now, if this moves into something like military tribunals, that's outside the kind of the scope of my expertise, and I don't really know what that window looks like, but it is realistic. But as I understand it from some of the people that I've reached out to that do have that experience, that's actually faster than in the state cases. So I would say that would move the timeline forward, not farther back. So I would just tell everybody, just to remind everybody, look for judges and prosecutors and attorneys either retiring, quitting, or getting debanked. And then shortly after that, I think we see the arrest coming, and this will come. So Let's just be patient a little bit more and allow these guys to do it the right way. And I think a testament that they're doing the right way, again, Mike, is we have not seen one leak from this administration. Their operational security is tapped in.
That's a really good point. I noticed it, but I didn't put it together like you did. That's fantastic. And all the things you put together for us today, excellent job as usual. So Alpha, thanks so much for coming on. It's a pleasure and honor. Wow, you've gone through so much and you've come out, smelling like roses. So good job.
Thanks to you, Mike, to the missus, the family, to the audience here. I'm here because you guys just didn't support me with words. You reached into your pockets, and I understand how hard it is to give money out when we're all scared about what's going to happen to our money to begin with. And so I just want to say I'm really indebted to you and your audience, and I'm very grateful for all the support I have from you guys.
Yeah, you didn't let us down.
We
believed in you, man, and you lived up to it. So, God, did you ever? Unbelievable. Good job.
I was never signing guilty, man. That was not going to happen.
Fantastic. Yeah. Brilliant. All right, brother. Thanks so much. And thanks for everybody that watched and you're going to watch. Share this widely. This is really good insights and intel. We'll see you guys next time.
God bless.
God bless.